My name is Veltrix, and I am a historian of the Kethari people. For 300 cycles, I have recorded the rise and fall of empires across the galaxy. I have seen powerful species conquer worlds and weak ones disappear into the darkness of forgotten history. I believed I understood the nature of war and survival among the stars. I was wrong. The story I am about to tell changed everything I thought I knew. It made me understand that the galaxy was about to enter a new age. An age that would belong to a species we had dismissed as primitive and unimportant. The humans. It began in the outer spiral, a region of space that most civilized species avoided. The area was filled with unstable stars, dangerous asteroid fields, and worlds too harsh for comfortable living. The Kethari Council considered it worthless territory. We were not alone in this thinking. The great empires of the galaxy had no interest in such a difficult region. But the Vorn Empire did. The Vorn were conquerors. Their massive warships moved through the galaxy like a plague, consuming everything in their path. They stood nearly 3 meters tall, with thick gray skin that could resist most energy weapons. Their 4 arms made them deadly in close combat, and their society was built entirely on warfare. For the Vorn, battle was not just a means to an end. It was their religion, their purpose, and their greatest pleasure. I was stationed on a Kethari observation vessel called the Silent Witness. Our mission was simple. We were to watch and record the Vorn expansion into the outer spiral. The Council wanted to understand Vorn tactics and strategies in case they ever turned their attention toward our territories. We were observers, nothing more. We had strict orders not to interfere with anything we witnessed. For many cycles, we watched the Vorn crush small colonies and mining operations. They showed no mercy to anyone who resisted. Those who surrendered were taken as slaves or used for entertainment in their fighting pits. Those who fought back were destroyed completely. The Vorn left nothing behind except burned worlds and empty stations. I recorded each conquest with cold detachment. This was the way of the galaxy. The strong consumed the weak. It had always been so, and I believed it would always continue. The Vorn were simply the latest in a long line of predator species that had risen to dominance through violence. Then we received reports of something unusual. Our sensors detected a small fleet of ships we did not recognize. They were crude vessels, built from basic materials and powered by primitive fusion reactors. Their weapons were chemical projectiles and simple energy beams. Compared to the elegant warships of the established galactic powers, these ships looked like toys. The ships carried identification signals that matched no known species in our databases. When our science officer finally decoded their communication signals, we learned the truth. These were human vessels. The humans were a young species from a small blue world called Earth. They had only discovered faster-than-light travel a few generations ago. Their expansion into the galaxy had been slow and cautious. They had established a handful of colonies in the outer spiral, choosing this difficult region because no one else wanted it. I reviewed everything we knew about humans. It was not much. They were bipedal mammals with limited physical abilities. They could not see in the dark like the Kethari. They did not have the strength of the Vorn or the natural armor of the Thessan. Their lifespans were remarkably short, less than a single century for most individuals. By all measurements, they were one of the weakest intelligent species in the galaxy. The Kethari Council had classified them as a minor species of no strategic importance. We expected them to either remain in the forgotten corners of space or eventually be absorbed by a more powerful civilization. The humans simply did not have the biological advantages necessary to compete with established galactic powers. When the Vorn fleet detected the human colonies, I expected a quick and brutal conquest. The Vorn commander, a warlord named Thrax, had over 50 warships under his command. The humans had perhaps a dozen small vessels protecting their settlements. The numbers told the entire story. This would not be a battle. It would be an execution. I prepared my recording equipment and settled in to document another Vorn victory. My colleague, a younger Cathari named Seleth, stood beside me at the observation console. "The humans have received the Vorn transmission," Seleth reported. "Thrax is demanding their immediate surrender. He is giving them 1 cycle to comply." I nodded without much interest. "What is the human response?" Seleth looked confused as she reviewed the translation. "They are refusing. Their commander states that they will not surrender their homes to slavers and murderers." This caught my attention. Most species, when faced with overwhelming Vorn force, either surrendered immediately or attempted to flee. Very few chose to fight against such impossible odds. "Perhaps they do not understand the situation," I suggested. "They are a young species. They may not realize what the Vorn are capable of." "No," Seleth said slowly. "Based on their communications, they are fully aware of what the Vorn have done to other colonies in this sector. They know what will happen to them if they lose." "Then they are fools," I said. "Record everything. This will serve as a useful example of why primitive species should accept their place in the galactic hierarchy." The Vorn fleet moved into attack formation. Their ships were massive engines of destruction, bristling with weapons designed to crack open planetary shields. Against such power, the human vessels looked pathetic. Their small warships moved to intercept the Vorn, forming a defensive line between the attackers and their colonies. I counted 12 human ships against 53 Vorn warships. The mathematics of war were simple and absolute. The humans would be destroyed within moments of combat beginning. But something strange happened before the first shot was fired. The humans began broadcasting on an open channel. At first, I thought it was a final plea for mercy, or perhaps a message to their families on the colonies behind them. But when Seleth translated the transmission, I felt my first moment of confusion. They were singing. Thousands of human voices rose together in a song I could not understand. The melody was simple but powerful, filled with defiance and determination. Even without knowing the words, I could feel the emotion behind them. These humans were not preparing to die. They were preparing to fight with everything they had. "What is this?" I asked Seleth. "Why are they wasting their final moments on music?" She shook her head. "I do not know. Human culture is strange to me. Perhaps this is some form of death ritual." Thrax clearly shared my confusion. The Vorn commander broadcast a harsh laugh across all channels. "Sing while you can, little creatures. Your voices will become screams soon enough." The human commander responded calmly. Her voice was steady and clear, despite the impossible situation she faced. "We know what you are, Vorn. We know what you have done. But you have made a terrible mistake coming here." Thrax laughed again. What mistake could that possibly be? The human's response would stay with me forever. "You have given us something to fight for. Our homes, our families, our future. You cannot take those from us. You will have to kill every single one of us first." "That," Thrax said, "is exactly what I intend to do." The battle began. The Vorn fleet surged forward like a wave of destruction. Their weapons lit up the darkness of space with terrible energy. The human ships scattered in what I initially assumed was panic. I was wrong. The humans were not running. They were using the asteroid fields and debris that filled this region of space. Their small ships darted between rocks and wreckage that the larger Vorn vessels could not follow. The crude human weapons began firing, not at the Vorn ships themselves, but at the space around them. Explosions rippled through the asteroid field. Massive rocks shifted and tumbled toward the Vorn formation. The giant warships tried to evade, but they were not designed for such tight maneuvering. 3 Vorn vessels collided with debris and lost shields. 2 more crashed into each other while trying to avoid the chaos. The humans struck at these wounded ships immediately. Their weapons were weak compared to Vorn armor, but they concentrated their fire with precision. Dozens of small missiles and energy beams hit the exact same spot on each target, burning through hull plates and reaching the vital systems beneath. Within the first few minutes of battle, the humans had destroyed 5 Vorn warships without losing a single vessel of their own. Thrax's confident laughter disappeared. His voice became filled with rage as he screamed orders at his fleet. The Vorn ships abandoned their formation and began pursuing individual human vessels through the asteroids. This was another mistake. The humans knew this region of space. They had lived here for years, mapping every rock and every danger. They led the Vorn ships into traps and ambushes. One human vessel would draw several Vorn ships into a narrow passage, then escape at the last moment while its companions attacked from unexpected angles. The Vorn were not prepared for this kind of warfare. They were used to overwhelming enemies with pure force. They had never encountered a species that fought with such coordination and creativity. Their advantage in numbers and firepower meant nothing when they could not catch their prey. I watched in silence as the battle continued. My recording equipment captured everything, but my mind struggled to process what I was seeing. These primitive humans were outfighting one of the most feared warrior species in the galaxy. "This is impossible," Seleth whispered beside me. "How are they doing this?" I had no answer. The tactical displays showed human ships moving in perfect coordination, as if they shared a single mind. When one ship was damaged, others would immediately cover its retreat. When a Vorn vessel showed any weakness, multiple human ships would converge on it with deadly precision. Hours passed. The battle that should have ended in minutes stretched into a brutal contest of endurance. The humans lost ships. I watched 3, then 5, then 7 of their vessels die in flashes of light. But they kept fighting. Every lost ship seemed to make the survivors more determined. The Vorn lost nearly 20 warships before Thrax finally ordered a temporary retreat. His fleet pulled back to regroup and reassess the situation. The human commander allowed them to withdraw, but her voice was strong when she broadcast her next message. "That was our warning. Leave this system and never return. If you attack again, we will destroy every single one of you." Thrax responded with fury. "You have won nothing, human. I will return with twice as many ships. I will burn your worlds and feast on your children. You cannot fight the entire Vorn Empire." The human commander's response was quiet but terrible in its certainty. "We can fight anyone. We can fight forever. We are humans, and we do not surrender." I turned to Seleth and spoke words I never expected to say. "We need to report this to the council immediately. Something extraordinary is happening here." She nodded, her eyes still fixed on the tactical display. "What do we tell them?" I thought carefully before answering. "We tell them the truth. A new player has entered the galactic stage, and I am not certain anyone is prepared for what comes next." The battle was far from over. Both sides were preparing for the next engagement, but something fundamental had already changed. The humans had proven they could fight the Vorn and survive. More than that, they had shown a determination and ferocity that defied everything we thought we knew about them. As I transmitted my report to the Kethari homeworld, I found myself wondering about these strange creatures. What drove them to fight against impossible odds? What made them willing to die rather than surrender? I had studied warfare for 300 cycles, but I had never seen anything quite like this. The answer would come in the days ahead, and it would change my understanding of the galaxy for Eve. 3 rotations passed, while Thrax gathered reinforcements. During this time, I made a decision that violated every protocol I had sworn to follow. I contacted the humans directly. The silent witness was supposed to remain invisible and neutral. We were observers, not participants. But what I had witnessed demanded understanding. I needed to know more about these creatures who had done the impossible. The human commander agreed to meet with me aboard a neutral station in the nearby system. Her name was Commander Elena Vasquez, and she arrived with only 2 guards, despite knowing almost nothing about my species or intentions. This casual bravery fascinated me. She was smaller than I expected. Humans stood nearly half a meter shorter than average Cathari, and their bodies seemed fragile compared to other galactic species. Commander Vasquez had dark hair streaked with gray and lines on her face that showed her age. By human standards, she was old enough to be considered past her physical prime. Yet there was something in her eyes that made me uncomfortable. A hardness and clarity that I had only seen in the most dangerous warriors of other species. This was not a creature to be underestimated. "You wanted to speak with me?" she said, settling into a chair across from my observation platform. "I have to admit, I am curious why a Cathari would risk breaking neutrality to contact us." "I am a historian," I explained. "My purpose is to understand the events that shape galactic civilization. What happened in that battle demands explanation. Your victory should have been impossible." She smiled slightly. "Impossible is a word I have heard many times, usually right before something impossible happens." "How did you do it?" "Your ships are inferior in every measurable way. Your species lacks natural weapons or armor. You were outnumbered more than 4 to 1. Yet you won." Commander Vasquez was quiet for a moment, considering her answer. "Do you know anything about human history, Veltrix?" "Very little. Your species only achieved space travel recently." "That is true. But we have been fighting for much longer than that." She leaned forward, and her eyes grew distant. "Humans have been at war with ourselves and our environment since we first became aware. We evolved on a world that constantly tried to kill us. Predators hunted us. Diseases ravaged our populations. Ice ages and volcanic eruptions destroyed our homes again and again. Many species face such challenges in their development," I pointed out. "Yes, and most of them either go extinct or evolve natural defenses. Thicker skin, sharper claws, better camouflage." She tapped her temple. "We evolved this. Our minds became our weapons. We could not outrun predators, so we learned to set traps. We could not survive the cold, so we took the fur from animals and made it our own. Every problem that should have destroyed us became a challenge we overcame through creativity and determination." I processed this information. "You are saying that your weakness forced you to become adaptable." "More than adaptable, it made us stubborn, relentless. We refused to accept defeat because accepting defeat meant extinction. That attitude is burned into our very nature." She paused. "Let me tell you about something that happened on Earth many centuries ago. There was a battle between a small group of soldiers and a massive invading army. The defenders numbered only a few hundred against tens of thousands. The defenders lost, surely. They did, eventually, but they held their position for days against impossible odds. They knew they would die, yet they fought anyway. Their sacrifice gave their people time to organize a larger resistance, and ultimately, the invasion was stopped." Commander Vasquez met my eyes directly. "That story is just one of thousands from human history. We are very good at refusing to die when we should. But courage alone cannot overcome superior technology and numbers," I argued. "You are correct. Courage is necessary but not sufficient." She smiled again. "That is why we also use everything else. Strategy, tactics, innovation, deception. Humans are not proud warriors like the Vorn. We do not care about fighting fairly or with honor. We care about winning and surviving." I remembered the battle, how the humans had used the asteroid field to neutralize Vorn advantages. "You exploited the environment." "We always exploit the environment. That is what humans do. We look at any situation and ask ourselves how we can turn it to our advantage. The Vorn expected us to meet them in open space where their superior firepower would be decisive, so we did not do that. We chose the battlefield and forced them to fight on our terms. Thrax is returning with a larger fleet, I warned her. Over 100 warships. He has also requested support from other Vorn commanders in nearby sectors. You may face 200 ships within the next cycle. Commander Vasquez nodded slowly. We know. Our scouts have been tracking their movements. You cannot defeat such a force. The same tactics will not work twice. Thrax will adapt. He might, she agreed, but so will we. That is another human trait. We learn from every battle, every defeat, every setback. The Vorn have been conquering the same way for centuries. Their tactics are predictable because they have never needed to change. They have always been the stronger force. They are still the stronger force. In raw power, yes, but power is only one factor in war. She stood and walked to a viewport, looking out at the stars. Did you know that humans almost destroyed ourselves several times? We developed weapons capable of burning our entire world. We built enough of them to kill everyone multiple times over. This shocked me. Why would any species create such things? Because we were afraid of each other. Different human nations competed for power, and fear drove them to create bigger and more terrible weapons. For decades, the threat of total destruction hung over our entire species. But you survived. We survived because we found ways to prevent the weapons from being used. We developed systems of communication and negotiation. We created alliances and agreements. We learned that sometimes the greatest victory is avoiding a battle entirely. She turned back to face me. The Vorn understand only one language: violence. They cannot imagine a species that might be dangerous in ways they cannot see or measure. What do you mean? Commander Vasquez sat back down, her expression serious. Right now, while we have been talking, human engineers across our colonies have been working on new weapons and defenses. Human scientists have been analyzing every piece of data from the previous battle. Human tacticians have been developing plans for dozens of different scenarios. By the time the Vorn return, we will have capabilities they do not expect. That is impossible. You cannot develop new technology in a few rotations. Watch us. There was no boast in her voice, only absolute confidence. Humans invented aircraft and then put ourselves on our moon within the same lifetime. We went from discovering nuclear energy to building weapons from it in only a few years. When we are motivated, we can accomplish things that seem impossible to other species. I sat in silence, processing everything she had told me. The picture she painted was disturbing. These humans were not the harmless primitives we had assumed them to be. They were something far more dangerous, a species shaped by millions of years of struggle and survival, with minds built for adaptation and competition. Why are you telling me all of this? I finally asked. Why reveal your nature to a potential enemy? Because you are not our enemy, Veltrix. The Cathari have no interest in these border territories. You came here to observe and record, not to conquer. She leaned forward. And because I want you to spread the truth about us. I want the galaxy to understand what humanity really is. You want others to fear you. I want others to know that attacking us has costs. The Vorn see us as prey. I want every species watching this conflict to understand that we are not prey. We are something the galaxy has never seen before. I left that meeting deeply troubled. Commander Vasquez had shown me a glimpse of human nature that contradicted everything the Cathari believed about them. They were not weak. They were simply different. Their strength came from places we had not thought to look. When I returned to the Silent Witness, I found Seleth waiting with urgent news. The Vorn reinforcements had arrived early. Thrax now commanded 127 warships, and more were on the way. The human colonies had less than 12 hours before the attack would begin. I went immediately to the observation deck and watched the human response to this crisis. What I saw amazed me. The human colonies were not preparing to flee. Instead, they were preparing to fight. Every ship capable of flight was being armed and crewed. Mining vessels and cargo haulers were being converted into weapons platforms. Civilian craft were being loaded with explosives and programmed for remote operation. More than that, the colonists themselves were arming. Men and women too old for military service were taking positions in defensive installations. Children were helping to move supplies and maintain equipment. The entire human population was mobilizing for war. I counted their forces. The humans had managed to repair some damaged ships and bring in reinforcements from distant colonies. They now had 18 proper warships. Add the converted civilian vessels and they might have 30 or 40 craft capable of fighting, against 127 Vorn warships, with more coming. "They are insane," Seleth said quietly. "They should evacuate, take their children and flee to safer territories. Why are they choosing to die here?" I thought about what Commander Vasquez had told me. Because these are their homes. Because running away is not in their nature. Because they believe they can win. That belief is delusional. Perhaps. I watched a human family on one of the colony feeds. A mother was saying goodbye to her children before boarding a converted mining ship. She hugged each of them, spoke words I could not hear, and then walked away without looking back. Or perhaps they know something we do not understand. The Vorn fleet arranged itself for the assault. Thrax broadcast his demands one final time, offering the humans a chance to surrender and face slavery rather than total annihilation. The human response came from Commander Vasquez. "Come and take us if you can, Vorn. We will be waiting." The battle began differently than before. Thrax had learned from his previous mistakes. He sent fast scout ships ahead to map the asteroid field and identify potential ambush points. He kept his fleet in tight formation, with heavy warships protecting the flanks. He advanced slowly and carefully, refusing to be drawn into traps. The humans responded with guerrilla tactics. Small ships darted out from hiding places, fired quick attacks, and then retreated before the Vorn could respond. They used missiles with delayed fuses, creating explosions minutes after they passed to confuse and distract. They broadcast fake signals and decoy transmissions to make their numbers seem larger. For hours, this cat-and-mouse game continued. The Vorn lost a few ships to clever traps, but they steadily pushed forward. Their numerical advantage was simply too great for the humans to overcome with tricks alone. Then something changed. The human fleet suddenly concentrated in a single location, forming a defensive line directly in front of their main colony. They stopped running and prepared to face the Vorn directly. It seemed like suicide. Thrax recognized the opportunity immediately. He ordered his entire fleet to converge on the human position, planning to crush them with overwhelming firepower before they could escape. But as the Vorn ships closed in, strange things began happening. Several Vorn vessels reported unusual energy readings from their engines. Others found their weapon systems malfunctioning. Within minutes, nearly a quarter of the Vorn fleet was experiencing critical system failures. "What is happening?" Seleth asked, confusion clear in her voice. I scanned the data streams frantically, trying to understand. Then I found it. Sabotage. The humans planted something in the Vorn ships during the previous engagement. Some kind of delayed action device. How is that possible? The Vorn ships were never boarded. I remembered the human missiles that had seemed to miss their targets. The debris that had floated near damaged Vorn vessels. They attached devices to the hulls, tiny machines that crawled into the ships through damage holes and external ports. The humans have been preparing this trap for days. The Vorn fleet fell into chaos. Ships tried to locate and remove the sabotage, but the human devices were small and well hidden. Some commanders attempted to continue the attack despite their problems. Others broke formation to deal with their crippled systems. And the humans struck. Their fleet charged forward into the confused Vorn formation. But they were not alone. From behind asteroids and debris fields all across the system, additional human vessels appeared. Dozens of ships we had not detected, hidden with engines cold and systems shut down. The reinforcements had been there all along, waiting for this moment. I watched the humans tear into the Vorn fleet with terrible efficiency. They targeted crippled ships first, destroying them before they could recover. Then they focused on isolated vessels that had broken from the main formation. Every attack was coordinated, every movement planned. Commander Vasquez led from the front. Her ship was in the thickest fighting, taking damage, but continuing to fight. I heard her voice over the communication channels, calm and steady as she directed her forces. Focus fire on the command ship, take out Thrax, and the rest will scatter. The human fleet converged on Thrax's flagship. The massive Vorn vessel fought back desperately, its weapons killing several human ships. But there were too many attackers. Human weapons hammered the flagship from every direction, overwhelming its shields and tearing through its armor. Thrax broadcast one final message before his ship died. "This is not over, humans. The Vorn Empire will avenge this defeat. You have made enemies you cannot imagine," Commander Vasquez responded as the flagship exploded. "We look forward to meeting them." The remaining Vorn ships fled. Those that could not escape surrendered. In the space of a few hours, the humans had destroyed or captured more than 60 Vorn warships. I sat in stunned silence, unable to comprehend what I had witnessed. The humans had not just survived. They had achieved a decisive victory against one of the most feared military forces in the galaxy. Seleth spoke first. "We need to send this recording to the Council immediately. They need to know what these humans are capable of." I nodded slowly, my mind still processing the implications of what I had seen. Yes, they need to know. Everyone needs to know. The galaxy was about to change forever, and I had been fortunate enough to witness the beginning. The recordings I sent to the Cathari Council spread across the galaxy faster than any message I had ever transmitted. Within days, every major civilization had seen footage of the human victory. Within weeks, scholars and military leaders from 100 worlds were studying human tactics and debating what this new species meant for galactic politics. I remained in human space to continue my observations. The Cathari Council had promoted me from simple recorder to official liaison. They wanted someone on location who could provide immediate reports on human activities. More importantly, they wanted someone who could help them understand these strange creatures. The humans welcomed my presence. Commander Vasquez assigned me quarters on the main colony and gave me access to their communication networks. She seemed to believe that having a neutral observer record their actions would help their reputation among other species. "Let them see what we truly are," she told me. "Not monsters or primitives, but people fighting for our right to exist." In the months that followed, I learned more about humanity than I had gathered in years of distant observation. I lived among them, ate their food, and listened to their stories. What I discovered both terrified and inspired me. The humans were not a unified species. They came from many different cultures and backgrounds, each with their own traditions and beliefs. They argued constantly about politics, religion, and philosophy. They disagreed about nearly everything, from the best way to cook food to the fundamental nature of existence. Yet when threatened, they unified with frightening speed. All their internal conflicts became meaningless when facing an external enemy. A human scientist explained this to me using a concept they called family rivalry. "My brother and I might fight every day," she said with a smile. "But if someone from outside tries to hurt him, I will destroy them. That is how humanity works. We are one family, even when we do not act like it." This unity was being tested. The Vorn Empire did not accept their defeat gracefully. Thrax had been one of many warlords, and his death brought shame to his entire clan. Other Vorn commanders began gathering forces for a massive retaliatory strike. Intelligence reports suggested they were assembling the largest fleet in Vorn history. The humans responded by doing something unprecedented. They reached out to other species who had suffered under Vorn aggression. Small civilizations that had been conquered or threatened by the Vorn were offered an alliance. The humans did not promise to protect them. Instead, they offered something more valuable: knowledge. Human engineers traveled to allied worlds and taught them the tactics that had defeated the Vorn. Human scientists shared technology freely, asking nothing in return except cooperation. Human diplomats built networks of communication and mutual support. I watched this process with fascination. The established galactic powers operated through dominance and hierarchy. Strong species controlled weak ones, and alliances were based on calculated self-interest. The humans operated differently. They treated potential allies as equals and invested in their success. "Why do you give so much away?" I asked Commander Vasquez during one of our regular discussions. "Other species guard their military secrets carefully. You share them openly." "Because a strong ally is more valuable than a weak dependent," she replied. "If our neighbors can defend themselves, the Vorn must divide their attention among many targets. If our neighbors are helpless, we must defend them ourselves. The math is simple." "But what if those allies turn against you someday? What if they use your own knowledge as weapons?" She shrugged. "Then we will face that challenge when it comes. Humans have always preferred calculated risks to guaranteed stagnation. Besides, if we treat our allies well, why would they turn against us?" This philosophy was working. The human alliance grew from a handful of small colonies to a coalition of nearly 30 species. Some contributed ships and soldiers. Others provided resources and manufacturing capability. A few offered only moral support and intelligence sharing. All were welcomed. The Cathari Council watched these developments with growing concern. They had maintained their neutral position throughout galactic history by avoiding entangling alliances and staying out of major conflicts. Now they faced a difficult choice. The humans were offering partnership, while the Vorn were demanding submission. I was called before the council to provide my assessment. The chamber was filled with the most powerful minds of my species, ancient historians and politicians who had guided Cathari civilization for generations. They listened in silence as I described everything I had witnessed. "These humans are dangerous," I concluded, "not because they seek conquest or domination, but because they change everything they touch. Their ideas spread like a virus through other cultures. Their methods challenge assumptions that have governed galactic civilization for millennia." "Do you recommend we oppose them?" the council chair asked. I considered the question carefully. "No, I recommend we join them." The chamber erupted in shocked conversation. Several council members accused me of bias or corruption. Others demanded to know how I could suggest abandoning centuries of neutrality. I waited for the noise to settle before continuing. The galaxy is entering a new era. The old order of dominant empires and submissive client states is ending. The humans are building something different, a network of cooperation based on mutual benefit rather than force. We can either be part of that network or be left outside it. "The Vorn will crush them," an elder counselor argued. "This coalition of primitives cannot stand against the largest military power in known space." "I thought the same thing before I watched them defeat Thrax," I replied. I have stopped underestimating what humans can accomplish. The debate continued for days. Meanwhile, the Vorn assembled their fleet. 240 warships gathered at the edge of human space, ready to sweep away the coalition and restore Vorn dominance. The Vorn's supreme commander himself took charge of the operation. He promised that no human would survive. The coalition response was coordinated, but desperate. They gathered every available ship, creating a defensive force of 112 vessels. The humans contributed 43, including several new designs that had been rushed into production. Their allies provided the rest, a diverse collection of craft from dozens of different species. I requested permission to observe the battle from the Coalition flagship. Commander Vasquez granted my request, though she warned me that survival was not guaranteed. I understood the risk. A historian who witnessed the fall of humanity would have an important story to tell. A historian who witnessed their triumph would have an even better one. The Coalition fleet met the Vorn in a region of space called the Ember Reach. The area was named for a cluster of dying stars that painted the void in shades of orange and red. It was a beautiful and terrible place to fight a war. The Vorn came in standard formation, their massive warships arranged in wedges designed to overwhelm enemies through concentrated firepower. They outnumbered the Coalition more than 2-to-1, and every ship in their fleet was individually superior to anything the defenders possessed. But the Coalition did not fight as the Vorn expected. Human commanders coordinated with their allies through a communication system of unprecedented sophistication. Different species with different strengths were assigned specific roles in the battle plan. Fast ships from one world handled scouting and harassment. Heavy cruisers from another formed the defensive line. Ships with specialized weapons targeted specific Vorn vulnerabilities. The Coalition fought as a single organism with many parts. Each species contributed what it did best, and the whole became far greater than the sum of its components. I had never seen anything like it in 300 cycles of observing warfare. The Vorn pressed forward through heavy resistance. They were taking losses, but their numbers allowed them to absorb damage that would have broken a smaller force. The Coalition line bent under the pressure, but did not break. Then the humans revealed their final surprise. Throughout the battle, several Coalition ships had been hanging back, apparently held in reserve. These were human vessels carrying new weapons that had been developed specifically for this engagement. When the Vorn fleet committed fully to the attack, these ships moved into position. The weapons they carried were based on a principle that human scientists called cascade disruption. Rather than trying to overwhelm Vorn shields through brute force, they induced feedback loops in the shield generators themselves. The effect spread from ship to ship through the tight Vorn formation. In seconds, dozens of Vorn vessels found their shields failing. The cascade moved through their fleet like a wave, leaving exposed hulls in its wake. The Coalition ships pounced on these vulnerable targets with devastating effect. The battle transformed from a grinding war of attrition into a slaughter. Vorn ships that had dominated galactic space for centuries died by the dozen. Their commanders screamed orders that no one could follow. Their proud formations dissolved into chaos. The Supreme Commander tried to rally his forces. He broadcast threats and promises, demanding that his warriors remember their honor and their duty. But the Vorn had never faced a defeat of this magnitude. Their confidence shattered along with their shields. When the Supreme Commander's flagship exploded under concentrated Coalition fire, the remaining Vorn ships fled. Many did not make it. Coalition vessels pursued them relentlessly, destroying any ship that could not escape into faster-than-light travel. The Battle of the Ember Reach ended with the destruction of nearly 200 Vorn warships. The Coalition lost 31 vessels. It was the most lopsided victory in recorded galactic history. I stood on the bridge of the Coalition flagship and watched the final Vorn ships disappear into the void. Around me, beings from a dozen different worlds celebrated together. Human soldiers embraced allies they had met only weeks before. Species that had never worked together now shared the joy of survival. Commander Vasquez approached me, her uniform torn and her face marked with exhaustion. But her eyes burned with the same fierce light I had seen during our first meeting. "What do you think, Veltrix? Was that worth recording?" I struggled to find words adequate for what I had witnessed. "Commander, I have studied war for 300 cycles. I believed I understood its nature and its limits. Today, You showed me that everything I knew was incomplete." She smiled slightly. "That is human nature. We specialize in showing people that their limits are not where they think. The Vorn will not recover from this defeat. Their empire will fragment as subject species revolt. You have changed the balance of power in this entire region of the galaxy." "We did not do it alone," she replied. "We did it together, with our allies. That is the lesson I want the galaxy to learn. Cooperation is strength, unity is power. No single species, no matter how strong, can stand against worlds working in common cause." I looked at the celebration around us. So many different beings, each with their own form and culture and history, united by the leadership of creatures who had achieved spaceflight within living memory. The impossibility of it struck me fresh. "The Council will want a detailed report," I said finally. "They will want to understand how this happened, how your species accomplished so much in so little time." "Tell them the truth," Commander Vasquez said. "Tell them that humans are not special because of our biology or our technology. We are special because we refuse to accept limits. We look at the impossible and see only a challenge. We face certain death and fight anyway. We fail 1,000 times and get up 1,001. She turned to face me directly. "Tell them that the galaxy is changing. The age of empires built on conquest is ending. Something new is being born here, a community of species working together for mutual benefit. And tell them that humanity will welcome anyone who wants to be part of that future." I transmitted my report to the Cathari Council that same day. I included everything I had witnessed, every observation, and every conclusion. But I ended with a personal note, something I had never done in 300 cycles of official reports. I told them that I had watched humans rise in battle against overwhelming odds. I had seen them unite enemies who had never cooperated before. I had witnessed them create something unprecedented in galactic history. And I had finally understood what made them different from every other species I had ever studied. Humans did not merely adapt to challenges. They transformed challenges into opportunities. They did not simply survive difficult circumstances. They used those circumstances to become stronger. They were not content to accept the galaxy as they found it. They insisted on reshaping it according to their vision. The Vorn had learned this lesson at terrible cost. Other powerful species would learn it soon enough. The galaxy that had existed for millions of years, divided into dominant and submissive, strong and weak, predator and prey, was ending. A new galaxy was being born, one where strength came from cooperation rather than domination, one where progress was measured by lifting others up rather than pushing them down, one where the impossible was just another problem to be solved. The Cathari Council eventually voted to join the human coalition. They were not the last to do so. Within a generation, the alliance included over 100 species. Within 2 generations, it was the dominant political structure in known space. I lived long enough to see the galaxy transform completely. Wars of conquest became rare as potential aggressors faced unified opposition. Species that had lived in fear for millennia found security through membership in the coalition. Trade and cultural exchange flourished as barriers fell between former enemies. On my final day, surrounded by friends from a dozen different worlds, I completed my last historical entry. I recorded the story of humanity's rise, from primitive creatures on a small blue world to leaders of a galactic community. I documented their battles, their innovations, and their endless determination. And I concluded with the truth I had learned on that observation deck so many cycles ago. The truth that changed my understanding of the universe. I saw humans rise in battle. I watched them do what should have been impossible. I witnessed them transform enemies into allies and chaos into order, and I knew, with absolute certainty, that the galaxy was theirs, not through conquest, not through domination, but through something far more powerful and far more lasting. Through their refusal to accept any limit, their willingness to share everything, and their unbreakable belief that tomorrow could always be better than today. The galaxy belonged to humanity. And for the first time in 300 cycles of watching civilizations rise and fall, I was genuinely optimistic about the future. The humans had earned it.